Hey everybody, welcome to Badge Banter, where we feature some incredible stories about the value of the ID badge and how we enable organizations to better recognize and connect people. I'm Lindsay Martin-Nez, I'm your host, and I'm super excited to introduce you to today's guest. Today we've got Josh Bowman from Bowman Vision Media with us. Thank you so much for joining us, Josh.
Well, thanks for having me. I love when I get to be a guest.
Yes, well, I'm really excited because I was a guest on your podcast late last year. And we had a lot of great conversations about the industry and really about marketing. But today we're going to focus a little bit more on the industry as a whole. But before we kind of dive into some of the stuff I want to chat about with you today, can you just share a little bit about yourself and your background and why you started Bowman Vision Media?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a victim of child labor laws. I started off working in family businesses growing up, which was electronics repair, TVs, audiovisual control systems. That kind of grew into IT networking, and telephone systems and security, and like structured cabling, fiber optics. So I've been in IT, structured cabling, telephone, all these various industries as an integrator for over 20 years. I've spent the last 10 years working for security manufacturers and have been really embraced by the security industry and really loved being a part of it. And then I started, July last year, I started Bowman Vision Media as a marketing agency that is dedicated to low voltage industries like security. And I started it because as a former customer of marketing, as I made the journey into director of marketing for a cloud SaaS company here in the security industry, I started thinking, all of the time and effort that I put into trying to work with, even though they were really great marketing agencies, they didn't understand us at all. And so it was almost like I had to have a second job and do so much of their work so that they could do the work for me. And I thought this is probably a really great way where I could start my own business, but also really help people. So that's the elevator pitch. Yeah.
And you try to, from a marketing perspective, do things a little bit differently and have fun with it, right?
I think I'm very different. A lot of the underlying strategies and techniques are all very much proper to what you would expect from a marketing agency. But I believe in authenticity. I believe in sincerity. I believe in having a sense of humor and poking fun at subjects in a polite way, because we all learn better when we're entertained, when we're enjoying ourselves. I think we remember something that we laugh at more than we remember when we were preached at or it was very dry and not interesting. And that's a lot of how we've connected, obviously, is over, Snoop on a Stoop and how much I enjoyed that. And again, it's very memorable, right? I'm sure you probably get a lot of comments on that. So I try not to be, dry and boring and do it the way everyone else does. And if you think about anything that's ever worked great and worked well, it's because somebody came at it from a different angle.
Yeah. Oh no, all the things that you said, while you were saying it, I was like, this is why we get along. This is how we found each other. So that's awesome. Well, I'm excited for you and I'm excited for your business. I appreciate you hopping on and chatting with us for a little bit today. So we'll shift gears a little bit and kind of talk about the security industry as a whole. It's interesting because from a marketing perspective, I think that it's easy to get wrapped up in buzzwords, and the industry does a really good job of embracing buzzwords, if you will. So what would you say the two biggest buzzwords are in the industry, in your opinion? And do you feel like they're just hype, or are these legitimate trends that people should be really aware of and embracing?
It's interesting. I think in the last year, for many years, I would have said that the two biggest buzzwords were RMR and cloud. Okay. And then all in one fell swoop, I feel like two have emerged that I hear about nonstop. And I think the buzzwords are mobile credentials, and I think the other one is AI. Yeah. And my entire feed on LinkedIn is just buried with those two discussions, for sure.
So, okay, it's funny that you say this, because I look back, I was thinking about this when I was coming up with some of these questions for you, and I was thinking about ISC West last year, and I left there and said to myself, if I hear someone use the word AI one more time in the next week, I'm going to lose it, because it was so overwhelming last year at the show. And so do you think that when it comes to AI, let's start there. Do you think that that's just a buzzword, or do you feel like we've actually really started to embrace it? Because last year at this time, when I left that, I thought a lot of the AI that was being described was really like analytics. advanced analytics and stuff that we really had been able to do for a long time in a lot of companies. And we were just kind of like phrasing it differently. But I think that some of that is shifting over the course of this year. So what's your opinion on, is AI a buzzword or legit? Like, are we really embracing it?
So I would say, if you looked at like, VSaaS and ACAS and these cloud-based technologies, I think we've lagged behind other industries. I think with AI, we've adopted it just as quickly as any other. And I think that AI really is predominant. I think that there are many organizations I know of that I can't speak about that are, infusing more and more types of AI models into their product. And I think part of it is our understanding of AI. I think part of the problem is we have, I think open AI with ChatGPT is really what kind of opened the floodgates for people to understand it. But AI really isn't new. And like you said, the analytics, that is the computer vision model that came from Stanford. And we have been using that for several years. But by the way, that is AI. So yeah. I think we're going to get better as consumers of AI and how we understand what AI is and classify it. I think that right now, a lot of people think about AI, they think about either robots that are going to destroy the world, or they're thinking about, ChatGPT. But the analytics are absolutely AI. And I think now what you're going to see is, well, if everybody's looking for AI, we've been using AI, but that didn't mean anything to anybody. There certainly is a rush to rebrand maybe existing products that were using it and to say, well, we're doing it. Why would we not mention it? But yeah, I think there can be a little fatigue though. I get it because I was pretty much all over the show floor last year making videos with our partners in my previous role. And I mean, every conversation that I overheard was absolutely AI was being mentioned. And I think that for a lot of people, again, their expectation was just that. Well, does it have a natural language processing component or large language model component where I'm going to interact with it in a human way? And then they kind of roll their eyes and, if it's not that, and then they don't feel like it's AI. So yeah. I think it's very legitimate. I just think our understanding of it's going to have to evolve. Probably change and evolve a little bit.
Yeah, as with anything. So that's fair. Yeah. So your other buzzword that you mentioned was mobile credentials. The show is obviously called Badge Banter. So we talk a lot about badges on this show, and both physical badges and mobile credentials. So clearly mobile credentials is in the buzzword category. And do you think that this is like something that's still on the horizon, but people are really buzzing about it? Or do you feel like they're about to dominate and take over the market?
I don't think that we should ever have one way to do things. I think that customer choice is very important. It's paramount to me. And, we kind of lump too many things together sometimes when we have that conversation. Obviously, if you look at like Phil Coppola, if you look at, Benji, even a lot of times they're discussing wallet very specifically. But as you know, like the Bluetooth approach has been around for over a decade. And I think can be effective as well. So I think there's a lot of little subcultures within that mobile discussion. I think Bluetooth is being forgotten about, but it's still a very good technology and good approach. But I think that, there are like a lot of federal government facilities. There are a lot of places where, mobile is not likely to be adopted and introduces other challenges based on who owns the device and the control they have over the device and the level of security. And I can't talk about them, but, I've worked with many federal customers that, they use badges not just to access a facility, not just to identify themselves, but to also provide logical access, into the network. And these types of facilities and level of clearance are not going to then let you put that on your iPhone, your personal device.
Right.
It's there for a reason. So I think I could see it continuing to become popular. And obviously we all want everything that we do to be on our phone. There's a natural compulsion there, but I don't think it works for everybody. So it's another one. I think it is a buzzword. I think we hear about it a lot. I think there's value in that approach. I think it's a good conversation. So I don't want to say that it's a buzzword with nothing to it. But I also think that anyone that tells you that that's the only way to go forward and that there's no place for the physical badge, I think that's bad advice. And I think that's sometimes we think about things in terms of the environments that we work with a lot, and we don't necessarily think about all environments. And I one that I never hear about is from a more of a like a financial standpoint. We take for granted we live near a city, we're in middle class or above, no big deal. We can afford that $1,200 iPhone and the, however many hundreds of dollars we're paying for the family plan, for everybody to have access. But we also can't create barriers where, there are a lot of jobs out there where people are barely getting by and they're working in a facility that wants to use access control, both for security, both for administration and timekeeping, verification. You're creating a barrier because they're not going to issue these minimum wage workers $1,200 iPhones and pay for their service. So are you saying that if you have bad credit, if you've fallen on hard times, there are people out there that can't pay their bill. So what happens when their mobile credential is tied to a wallet on that phone that they can't afford, that they can't use anymore? What happens when they can't afford, I've worked in software enough that even when you use something that's like a progressive web app approach, a flexible app, it still requires that the device you're using is supported by Apple or by Android, and there is a cutoff. So at some point, you've got to make that investment again, and these phones aren't really getting any cheaper,
No.
honestly. So I think there's an exclusionary aspect to it, and I could probably feel, Phil and Benji rolling their eyes at me if they watch this. I understand maybe that's not the majority of people, but again, I think it's not a truly inclusive approach. If we start to say, well, that's the only way that somebody can interact with access control. So I think there's so many different reasons, so many different environments, whether it be security or financial or, I don't think mobile's for everybody. I think it can be great where it fits, but I think the physical badge is here to stay forever as well.
And I think that what you're talking about, like you mentioned a couple of people, there's some very predominant voices who are very polarizing and like very aggressive in their stances on it, just from a personality perspective. And some of that's like just their job. Like that's their job to evangelize mobile credentials or whatever it might be. So I get that. But almost as a whole, I think from a marketing and like how we phrase it, it has been so positioned as either or, and like, or this is where we're going and it will replace everything. And even people can make a case that like, I sometimes am a little bit extreme, but I've also been asked to be extreme on the opposite side in debate conversations and stuff like that don't necessarily reflect like my personal beliefs, which is, I very clearly believe that the badge has a place and it's here for a long, long time. And that there's all types of value in like the physical, the visual representation of who I am, and you seeing my name and engaging with me and, recognizing who I am and connecting with me on a personal level outside of the technology. There's elements like that we're not even talking about when we're just thinking about it from a technology perspective. But it's not either or, and we should do better as an industry of talking about it like, well, what's the best fit for the customer, or how do we create a hybrid model? And some of it's the extreme stance in wallet, from like Apple and your big players who are, if you're in on mobile, you're all in, and every device must support it and stuff like that too. Well, that's fine, but it doesn't mean that you won't also have a visual badge for some use cases, even if it's just visual security. So I think it's a marriage, that they're going to work together for a very long time.
I would agree, and no shade on those that their job is to promote that.
Absolutely not.
Their job is not to. Their job is to promote what they're, employed by, and I'll use myself as an example. I was in cloud video surveillance and access control for 7, almost 8 years. It wasn't that I feel that on-premise has no place in this world and it's bad.
Yeah.
It's just I'm being paid to promote cloud.
Sure.
And so that's what I'm going to talk about. So obviously if I'm very vocal, I'm very visible, and I'm online and people are seeing my content a lot, that's the content they're going to see. So I don't have a problem with, people doing their job properly. And I actually do believe Phil and Benji and others do have a passion for it. Absolutely. And that's great. I just think, we simply need to make sure that there are other voices like you that promote the other side of the discussion. And I think both have their place. And I think anytime we talk about a hybrid where you can take the best of both worlds, I think there's always a positive there.
Absolutely. I love that. So we talked a little bit about buzzwords, talked about AI and mobile credentials, but what's a trend or a change that you feel like is taking place in the industry right now that you think will have the biggest impact on end user customers specifically over the next 3 to 5 years?
So I kind of feel like AI has moved beyond the future. I think it happened, and it happened quick. And I think we're going to continue to experience that. I'm going to be called tinfoil hat for a couple more years probably, but if you talk to Don Marone, if you read any of the stuff that I read, I mean, we are probably about 4 years away from AGI, which is truly autonomous intelligence. And I think that is going to absolutely change the world. And I'm an optimist. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to fill a lot of gaps in our society. It's going to be very helpful. A lot of times we have concerns. I mean, right now there's an unstable job market in a lot of industries and people are struggling and suffering. And so we tend to think about things as taking jobs, but the reality is you don't have to be, a demographic expert to understand. I mean, we went from the baby boomer era, which is predominantly the elder generation now, where there was 4.6 children per family. Now we're all the way down to Gen Z is predicted to be 1.4. And there's a big, huge drop between each generation. We can't have enough immigration to make up that gap. So just from a societal standpoint, it's exciting to me that we actually could probably keep our society going much longer by having robots that are truly intelligent, can walk amongst us and help fill some of those gaps. But to tie that to security, that's going to change everything about what it means to secure a facility and to keep people safe. And, everything's going to change. And, quantum computing's out there too, and nobody's talking about that and what that could mean. So I honestly think in the next 3 to 5 years, AI is going to be the same as talking about the computers or internet. We're beyond that. If you're going to be a part of any industry, really, you're dealing with it, even if you don't know that you're dealing with it, which is how I feel cloud has come to pass. If you log into your bank, you've been doing that for, over a decade now using cloud. But I think the next frontier is going to come up on us a lot quicker than we think. And I think it'll be positive, but I think the security industry is going to not just have to embrace that technology. And I'm optimistic by the way that we've so quickly adopted AI. But we're going to have to think about, what are the new threats and what are the changes that we're going to have to adapt to. And we'll have to use that AGI, as a part of that process. So,
as I guess, well, everybody,
absolutely.
Not just the security industry. So, and to your point, I mean, I like that you're optimistic about it because I've heard a lot of people be like real negative about it or nervous about it. And while it may replace some jobs, there's also the other component of it. I mean, like how many new jobs will be created as we don't even know about right now, like things that don't even exist. Like think about stuff that didn't exist before the internet and that created like all types of new industries and new jobs for people. So I feel like that's the same thing will happen in this scenario as well.
Absolutely. And I hope I'm wrong, but I mean, again, you just look at the numbers of the family size through the generations. As we start to lose the boomer generation from the workforce, we have a huge drop down to, I'm at the tail end of Gen X, almost millennial. My generation drops a kid, but now you get down into millennial and Gen Z. I mean, we're less than half of the people that were produced in that older generation. So it's kind of like everything I found in life. I think we're good at understanding the now and the concerns now. And that's where I give credence to that. I get where people have that fear. But 10 or 15 years from now or 20 years from now, we're going to have the opposite fear. We're going to be like, well, I can't get a doctor.
Yeah.
There are no firefighters. Well, who's going to be a police? There's just not enough people. And our economy depends on us to grow on top of that. So I think it's going to be overwhelmingly positive, but I think like anything, it's going to come at a time where we're not quite there yet. And I think it's going to hurt at first. But we'll get through it because we have to. And I think people are highly adaptable, and I think we're pretty good at figuring things out.
I think so too. Well, I like that optimism. Way to get really deep. Way to get really deep with this discussion. I like where you went, Josh.
I preach fun, and then I come in with the high level stuff. It's Bait and switch.
We're all about fun. Let's talk about yeah, taking over the world. It's all about fun. No. I appreciate it. It's good insight for sure. So thank you for sharing all of your thoughts with us. It was a great conversation. But I do have one segment that we added this season,
Yes.
Badge Banter, called Badge Blitz. And so what we're going to do is for 60 seconds, I'm going to set an old school timer over here. But I'm going to basically hit you with some rapid fire questions. I did not send these to you, so you have had no time to prep. But you're just going to go with your gut and tell me exactly how you feel. So we're going to get like honest, real truth out of Josh here.
All right, let's do it.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. All right. What is one thing that you think every organization should do to increase their security?
Oh, wow. Be educated.
Okay.
Don't just depend on somebody to tell you.
I like that. What is a current industry practice or outdated technology that drives you crazy?
Pushy sales techniques.
That's every industry. In your opinion, what's the most overused phrase in meetings or emails?
Oh, let me circle back.
That's a good one. If you didn't work in the security industry, what would you be doing?
Oh, goodness. Well, I've been outside of the industry. I would probably either be in IT or telecom.
Okay. What do you think people will be nostalgic for in 500 years?
In 500 years? Probably the human touch.
Oh, man. And if you could swap
It'd be all
jobs
robots.
with anyone for a day, who would it be?
The president.
That's my answer, too. Like, I think that would be so cool.
Yeah, I could fix some stuff in a day if I don't have to worry about getting reelected.
Yeah, you don't have to really worry about anything. You've got a day.
Right.
So, oh man, well, it was so fun chatting with you. Thank you. I really appreciate your insight and your honesty, and just kind of the way that you look at the industry and your perspective. So I thank you for hopping on with me and sharing that with all of our listeners.
Well, I appreciate that, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, it was fun. So we hope you'll join us next time as we take you beyond the badge.